Hello everyone, I'm Paul Nickelwire Grimes. It's that time of the year again when we look at the best in film with my top 10 movies of 2021. This is Paul's trip to the movies. Coming in at number 10 is The Harder They Fall. Writer-director James Samuel is an up-and-coming filmmaker that you definitely want to keep your eye on. His film, The Harder They Fall, packs a punch, offering up a really fresh take on the Western genre, using fictional and real black voices from that era to tell his story. He has a really terrific ensemble on his hands with Jonathan Majors, who's joined by Zazie Beetz, Regina King, Idris Elba, and Delroy Lindo, just to name a few. And you can really feel his voice and his style as a writer-director in full force. The Harder They Fall is now on Netflix. Now, Fran Kranz crafted a four-person drama to perfection with Mass. This is my number 9 film of 2021. It stars Ann Dowd, Reed Birney, Martha Plimpton, and Jason Isaacs as two sets of parents coming together after a tragic event in hopes of finding closure, forgiveness, and peace. The majority of this film takes place around a table in a church basement, and Kranz and his actors really show immense restraint, never resorting to melodrama. The end result is a really deeply moving film that just gets you thinking about this all too real scenario that we see time and time again. Mass is now available through video on demand. Coming in at number 8 is Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, this is not the first time that I've had a superhero movie on my best of the year list, but Spider-Man No Way Home is not only the best Spider-Man movie, but really top tier in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is a beautiful love letter to this iconic character, and the movie really brought together 3 Spider-Man franchises while retaining, that important emotional core with these characters, played by Tom Holland, Zendaya, Jacob Bataloni, and Marissa Tomei. Spider-Man No Way Home is now in theaters. Number 7 is The Power of the Dog. Jane Campion's quiet western really sneaks up on you with its rich storytelling and production values. She's the kind of director who wants the audience to do part of the work, as she doesn't want to just force every emotion and action on us. She's created this really evocative western full of imagery, mood, and really terrific performances from Benedict Cumberbatch, Cody Smith-McPhee, Kirsten Dunst, and Jesse Plemons. The Power of the Dog is now streaming on Netflix. Coming in at number 6 is the first of 2 musicals on my list this year with Tick, Tick, Boom. Lin-Manuel Miranda proves that he's a jack of all trades, directing Jonathan Larson's autobiographical musical. And he's really honored Larson and the Broadway community with this film. And I really think that Andrew Garfield should win the Oscar for Best Actor with his portrayal of Jonathan Larson. He just puts his whole body and self in that role. Tick, Tick, Boom is now streaming on Netflix. The other musical on my list, coming in at number 5, is West Side Story. The combination of Steven Spielberg and Tony Kushner making a new adaptation of this classic musical by Stephen Sondheim, Arthur Lawrence, and Leonard Bernstein is one for the books. I mean, they've reminded audiences why this is a timeless story, and that feels just more relevant than it did when it was first written. Rachel Zegler, Ariana DeBose, Mike Feist, and Rita Moreno all give stirring performances. Do not miss this movie, and really try to catch it in theaters if you can. There was no larger cinematic experience this year than Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of Dune, which is my number 4 film of 2021. And this is why you go to the theaters to see a movie like this. The craftsmanship is on a completely other level, and Hans Zimmer's score is an absolute brilliant work of art. Rarely do they make epics like this anymore, as even Marvel and DC just can't compare with what Denis did with this film. I cannot wait for Dune Part 2, as there's just so much more to the story. Dune is now available through video on demand. My number 3 movie of 2021 is The Beatles Get Back. Now, some may classify this 3-part Beatles documentary as television, but to me it's one long documentary by Peter Jackson, worthy of the big screen despite its Disney Plus release. Now, Jackson has taken unseen footage from the Beatles' Get Back sessions and restores it as if it was just shot yesterday. It's gorgeous in its execution and really lets you sit right up close to some of the greatest musicians of all time. It's intimate and personal, seeing their interactions, not only as bandmates, but as really dear friends. Whether you're a longtime Beatles fan or just casually watching, I think that you're going to have a greater appreciation for the Fab Four after watching The Beatles Get Back, which is now streaming on Disney+. My number 2 movie of 2021 is Summer of Soul, or Why the Revolution Could Not Be Televised. Now, the Harlem Cultural Festival in Harlem, New York, drew massive crowds in the summer of 1969, and yet it's been largely ignored and really forgotten about since then. Now, Questlove, the band leader for The Roots and The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, takes us back to that powerful summer. Musicians like Gladys Knight, Sly and the Family Stone, Mavis Staples, and Nina Simone stood center stage, opening their souls, calling out for peace and change. Now, this isn't your standard surface-level concert documentary. We're reminded of how music and the arts are just inspired by what's happening around us at all times. Summer of Soul is now streaming on Hulu. Now, for my number 1 film, I went into this not knowing a whole lot and just came out so touched, so moved, and this movie is CODA. It's written and directed by Sean Hayter. It's based on a French film. And CODA stands for Child of Deaf Adults. It centers on Ruby, a high school senior who is the sole interpreter for her deaf family, and contemplates moving off to college to pursue her own dreams of being a singer. Hayter examines how Ruby uses music, American Sign Language, and the spoken word to find and use her own voice. It's an eye-opening piece with how challenging it must be for her family to feel like a part of the community and to be taken seriously as fishermen. It's heartwarming, funny, touching, and will make you cry. CODA is now streaming on Apple TV+. Now, I do want to give some honorable mentions to movies like Spencer, The Tragedy of Macbeth, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and The Many Saints of Newark. All could have been on this list. It's been a really strong year for movies. So now let's recap. Coming in at number 10, The Harder They Fall. 9, Mass. 8, Spider-Man No Way Home. 7, The Power of the Dog. 6, Tick Tick Boom. 5, West Side Story. 4, Dune. 3, The Beatles Get Back. 2, Summer of Soul, or Why the Revolution Could Not Be Televised. And coming in at number 1 is CODA. Those were my top 10 movies of 2021, and I'd love to hear from you. Like this video on YouTube, click subscribe, leave me a comment on YouTube. I'd love to hear what are some of the movies, the performances that really touched you. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Paul's Movie Trip, and then go to my website, paulstriptothemovies.com, for even more reviews and a lot of interviews that I did this year with really awesome people like Lady Gaga, Nicole Kidman, Julianne Moore, so many other great, Jake Gyllenhaal, Tom Hanks again. So you'll definitely want to check out those interviews. I had a blast this year. So thank you so much for watching my top 10 movies of 2021. This is Paul's Trip to the Movies.